And hello there, Cougar Academy, Algebra 1, and welcome to another lesson here, 9.4 Part 2. So, how do you solve polynomials by factoring? This is an extension of factoring, and it's really not too bad, but you are going to need to use your factoring skills. Step 1, remove the GCF if possible. Step 2, factor, just like our last lesson. And the new thing really is splitting into two equations and solving. So, let's look at an example here. Number 1 may not seem familiar to factor, but let's keep in mind we have to remove a greatest common factor first. So each of these shares a b, which we can take out. So there is step 1. Step 2, well actually that was step 2 is factoring. And step 3, split into two equations. So here is what I mean by that. Right behind this b, we can kind of think of this as two different parts. And what we do with that is we set this b equal to 0, and we set this other expression, it's actually already equal to 0, b minus 8 equal to 0. What we do with each of those is solve. The left-hand side is already solved, b equals 0. It's actually one of our solutions. And, whoops, the right-hand side is simple to solve. We're just going to add 8, and b equals 8. So we have two solutions, okay? The solutions are that either b equals 0 and b equals 8. Both of those are these solutions. What happens here is, think about it, we have b times b minus 8. Either one of those things could be 0, and we have a true expression. So if you wanted to check, you could substitute each of those back in. But there's the idea. Let's check out another example, number 2. So really same idea, factoring out the b. So b and b plus 2 equals 0. Split that up. Right behind, b equals 0, b plus 2 equals 0. Subtract the 2 over, and b equals negative 2. So our two solutions are b equals 0 and b equals negative 2. Not too bad, hopefully. Where it gets a little more challenging are 3 and 4. So we need to remember our other factoring techniques. Let's think of our tree. So 56. 56, the factors are 8 and 7. And a negative 8 and a positive 7 will get us to the negative 1. Therefore, we have our first step of factoring. Minus 8 and x plus 7 equal to 0. Now, where we split this one up is right between the two factors. So on the left, we have x minus 8 equals 0. And on the right, we technically have x plus 7 equals 0. And we have those two little mini equations to solve. Add 8, x equals 8, subtract 7, x equals negative 7. So those are the two solutions for this problem, x equals 8 and x equals negative 7. It really does not matter which way you have these set up. So long as you get the answers in the end, you're in good shape. Number 4, so factors of negative 7 that add to positive 6. May be a little tricky here, but positive 7 and negative 1. So our factors would be n plus 7 and n minus 1 equals 0. Split it down the middle, so to speak, and think of our two little mini equations. So n equals negative 7 and n equals 1. That's where those two come from. Okay, and let's look at a few more. Why not? So 5, switching gears again, bringing out the greatest common factor first, and then splitting up. So be comfortable with that. That's why we're doing a lot of examples. But the more practice you do, the better you will get. 0 and 7 are these solutions. So whichever way you want to write them out is fine by me. Now, before we get 7 and 8, we'll do 6 here. Another factoring practice. B minus 4, B minus 3 equals 0. And that means b equals 4 and b equals 3. So I kind of jumped ahead on those ones, but the more practice you do, the more confident you'll get. You'll be able to do that. Now let's take a look at 7 and 8. We have to bring out all of our tricks. So remove a greatest common factor. If that first number is not 1, if you have 5 or something else, think GCF. So what we should do first is remove the 5. So x squared minus 7x plus 6 equals 0. So there's the GCF step. From there, factor that inside. So factors of -6 and -1 would add to -7. And you only need to solve these pieces. There's not an x with that 5. So when we split this up, you only need to worry about x minus 6 equals 0 and x minus 1 equals 0. So x would equal 6 and x would equal 1. Both of those are our options. And number 8, remove the greatest common factor first, so 2. And then we're going to have v squared plus 3v plus 2 equals 0. And factoring that middle part out is v plus 2 and v plus 1. Still have that 2 out front. And that means v equals -2 and v equals -1 from those inner parts. Okay, so there is factoring in a nutshell. One more bonus thing to think about. Okay, the must be set equal to 0. So you're going to see some practice problems, and I'll have the answers up. But for example, let's say we had something like x squared plus, let's go with 5x equals -4. Let's say you had to solve something like that. The actual first step is to set equal to 0. So you would actually want to add 4 to each side. That is going to make x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. Then you could factor and solve. So we'd be looking at x plus 4 and x plus 1 equal to 0. And then we'd have x equals -4 and x equals -1. So make sure it is set equal to 0. You'll see some practice problems I threw in with those. And good luck, guys. Let me know if you have questions, and practice away.